This is your host Sandeep Pednekar, and you're watching One Universe, the talk show based on the non-profit One Universe that fosters positivity through the promotion of love, peace, and harmony. And what subject better to have than have Dr. Sarah Leat, who is with us today, to talk about all the good things she does for the community. So, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, tell us about yourself.
Oh man, where do you want me to start? Professional, personal?
Let our viewers know where you are from, where you were born
Okay.
and raised.
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Texas. I was born in North Richland Hills, Texas, which is a suburb of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Okay.
And I lived in Texas my entire life until I took a job at the University of Memphis and moved here. And so I went to school in Texas. Yeah, born and raised Texan for sure.
And what was your education in?
My undergraduate was in psychology and religion. I had a double major.
Nice.
And then I got my master's in social work and then my PhD in social work.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been what, year and a half, 2 years since you moved to Memphis?
Yeah, 3 years. Yeah, this summer actually. Mm-hmm.
I know it has been 3 years, but still welcome to Memphis.
Thank you. I still feel very new. This is the first time I've actually come to this library too. So it's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Please tell us, what did you do before coming here?
So before coming here, I was obviously in a PhD program, and before that, I did some internships and a brief job as a case manager working at a family justice center in Fort Worth. And so I was an intake manager or intake specialist and case manager there, helping women who had experienced domestic violence, primarily women who had experienced domestic violence, get the resources that they needed. And then I had a brief time in the Tarrant County Community Court Victims Assistance Unit where I helped people that had experienced all types of crime kind of get resources and support and do some court accompaniment and stuff like that to help them kind of through the criminal justice process. And then that was during my master's, but once I finished my master's, I decided to get my PhD, and then I started working in academia as a teacher, professor, researcher.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then was this the first job you had right here at the University of Memphis?
Since my PhD, yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And what exactly do you do at your job here?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag. It's primarily teaching. I teach in our master's program in the School of Social Work at the University of Memphis. And then I also do a research, I have a research agenda that I try to push forward. And so it's kind of 50-50 research and teaching.
And what kind of research is it?
I primarily focus on gender-based violence, specifically adult experiences of intimate partner violence. And so I like to look at the experiences of women, men seeking help for domestic violence and what that's like, what that process is like, anything that makes it extra difficult for them, makes it better for them to seek help. And then I'm also interested in kind of how transportation networks facilitate help seeking as well, and then how the built environment largely kind of affects perceptions of services, access to services, things like that.
Nice. Okay, so we'll talk about that some more, but
yeah.
I definitely wanted to let our listeners know that you and I serve under the Sexual and Domestic Violence Task Force for the city and county.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, so I actually, before I even started my position, Dr. Amai Iratsogi reached out to me, and she knew I had an interest in domestic violence research, and so she asked if I'd like to join the grant that funded the creation of the task force, and I said, absolutely, it's right up my alley. I'm really interested in how survivors of domestic violence navigate the criminal justice process and kind of the relationships that they form with criminal justice personnel throughout the process, and how that either impacts or facilitates their ability to kind of lead those relationships and get justice for what they've experienced. And so she invited me on, and I said, sure, and here we are.
Okay. So let us go back and forth in the sense that the work that you do with your job itself,
yeah,
and then what you do with the task force,
sure,
and then how it interrelates and how it helps each other.
Yeah.
So talk about the job that you have at hand.
Yeah, so I am, like I said, I'm primarily a professor, and so I teach in our master's program, and I teach two classes, our research class, first semester research class for master's students, where we look at kind of what is research, what is the research process, what does that mean for social work practitioners and students, how you access research, how do you use that to then inform evidence-based practice in the field of social work. And so definitely helping students kind of get that appreciation for research that's been done on topics that they're interested in or areas of practice that they're a part of. And then I also teach what we call our, it's more, I guess, tailored towards leadership in the social work field. It's called advanced community practice, but basically how do you kind of become a leader in a nonprofit, and how does that then help you become like a community advocate? How does that kind of the larger, higher level of practice?
Oh wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I did not know that there would be a curriculum based on this
Yeah.
to tell people in the community this is the process, these are the steps that you can take to become a leader.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How effective has that been?
So far, so good. I think most of the students that are in our program are kind of starting out in their social work careers, so they're not quite ready to take those leadership roles. But we do have some students that have been in the field for several years that come back and they find it very helpful because they're looking at kind of getting to those more management positions and things like that. So it's a different, it kind of is a shift, whereas the focus isn't on your clientele, the focus is more on your employees and how to run your organization. And so I kind of talk about how you go through that transition and how to do that effectively.
Okay, so this, you, as you explain more, I hear that you're talking about being in a professional corporate world than in the community.
Well, kind of a both and. So
Both,
either
okay.
leading in a nonprofit or working for a larger organization, government organization as a manager, supervisor, things like that.
So let's say if somebody from the community would reach out to you and say, hey, you know what, I need to know these things. I have tried, I have failed, and things don't seem to be going anywhere, but my zest and my desire to do something for the community is still there, but I know I'm lacking many things. And so there is a quadrant of things that, like, you know what you know, you don't know what you know, you know what you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So out of these, if there are some, or the focus is right at the center of all the quadrants and
Right.
small parts here and there, how would you handle that?
I guess it would depend on what their professional background is in, because ours is very much, my course is very much tailored towards the social work profession, but we do have another great program at the University of Memphis that's called Public and Nonprofit Administration. And so depending upon their needs, they could either audit my class or join my class, or I would refer them to one of the professors in that department to assist with that need.
So for them to know and understand, would they have to join the class? Or you can just tell them, hey, how about this, or direct them and guide
Yeah,
them?
I mean, for sure. Like if there was a need, like I said, it's very tailored towards the social work profession, so it would just really depend on the need in terms of what I could assist with there. But yeah, I've helped organizations. I haven't had anybody reach out to me specifically related to leadership needs, but I've had organizations reach out to me with other needs like grant writing, other types of budgeting, kind of those basic things that you have to do as a leader. But.
So guys, you have some help here, and we have also had Dr. Amaya Hiratsuki on the show, and she has mentioned that she helps people from the community get grants, and the department can also offer interns to help for that grant. So you can do the same.
Yeah, we do have social work, as part of the social work profession, you do have to do a practicum, which ends up being either a semester-long or a year-long internship. And so we have students all over the community placed at organizations, as long as they're supervised by social workers. That's kind of the main requirement.
So the social workers would be from outside?
Yes, outside of the university, placed at the organization, yeah.
If that social worker herself has, or himself, has a project that needs to be implemented in the community, would that social worker be responsible then for overlooking everything, or would you have to have somebody else supervise?
In terms of what?
In implementing the project itself.
Like a research project, or like a organization, a program?
Both.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at wanting to start a new program or a project, then definitely the person who's kind of spearheading it would be the one to lead it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, have you done such projects?
I've mostly done research projects, yes.
Like what?
So all sorts of things. I guess I can start with my dissertation research. So what I did for my dissertation was I looked at the impact of domestic violence shelters on, I guess environmental stressors within domestic violence shelters on kind of the survivor's perception of what it was like to be in a shelter. Because I was interested in things like the temperature, the amount of control you have within the space, if you have comfortable bedding, things that you need for your kids, if that kind of impacted their perception of the services that they were getting from the shelter. And so what I did there was identify kind of a list of environmental stressors and then create a scale that can then be used to kind of measure the impact of how those stressors are affecting a person. And so what we see in domestic violence shelters a lot of times is it's a very stressful time for everyone. A lot of times people are entering them in crisis. They have physical injuries, they have emotional injuries, they have just trauma from every side of whatever you want to say. And so that trauma kind of plays out in different ways. Either they are able to kind of adjust themselves to the shelter environment, or they aren't able to do so and they return home to kind of the familiar environment. And so what I kind of hypothesized was if we can make the environment potentially more familiar to them, it would make them more likely to stay in the shelter and therefore get the services and support they need to get out of that abusive relationship.
Okay. So what I hear is that there are set parameters that you apply to a scenario, but I think that you are not using one size fits all. You take it one case by case, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So the situation of one person might be different from the other, although the parameters that you weigh each person would be the same.
Yeah.
The end results or the reasons of why a person is under stress or in a domestic violence situations are totally different.
Yes.
You do, I want to make specifically clear to the audience that you are, not only you, but the entire team of people who are make sure that it doesn't become one size fit all, and they don't just say, oh, you came here, so the perpetrator or the said perpetrator is actually a perpetrator. You analyze.
Yeah, there's a lot of, every shelter does it differently, every service organization does it differently, but you definitely meet with the client, you assess kind of what's going on, and then mostly you're just finding out kind of what their presenting needs are and how you can assist. And so in the social work field, what we primarily do is provide resources and support. And so when a person sits in front of us, what is it that you need today? How can I help you with that? What resources can I provide to you? And then how can I support you as we try to access those different resources? And so very much the client is in the driving seat, determining kind of what's best for them, because they know what's best for them ultimately. And there's no way that we as social workers can predict kind of what's going to work for everyone. And so we just try to meet everybody on a case-by-case basis.
So now let us talk about the Sexual and Domestic Violence Task Force.
Yeah.
How did it start for you?
So like
I know that, Dr. He asked you,
Yeah, so she mostly the reason I was brought to the team was because they wanted a social worker there, because a lot of the organizations that were going to be a part of the task force had social work professionals who were providing the services. And so I think she wanted some assistance kind of liaising with the social service side of the service and network when it came to figuring out how we would approach this task force. And so I kind of came on as more of an assist, just trying to provide, maybe some vocabulary that would be helpful to kind of speak to the different people that would be in the room. But definitely Dr. Gerdsoki was leading it from the beginning. And then, I think it's just kind of evolved to where she and I have a great rapport, and so we work really well together. And so now I think we're a team, and I think I'm proud of where we're at, where it is now.
So what are or were some of the first few observations that you saw looking at Memphis and the Mid-South itself and the issues associated with sexual and domestic violence?
Yeah, so what initially attracted me to the University of Memphis, I'll say that, was that the university is very passionate about its community engaged scholarship, and that spoke directly to my heart. I didn't get my PhD to be an academic in a high tower where I would just sit and turn out papers and things like that on topics that were important to me. I wanted to use my skill set to really benefit the community around me, and what my skills are is research, evaluation, grant writing, things like that. that really attracted me to the University of Memphis because they're very community oriented, and the faculty, particularly within the School of Urban Affairs and Public Policy, which is where the social work and department of criminal justice are nestled, or kind of a school within a school. They're very passionate about making sure that the research and stuff that we do doesn't just kind of fall into the academic crevices and get lost, right? It has to have a very applied focus, and so I really appreciated that. And so I think when it came to the task force, or when it came to me coming to the University of Memphis and being involved in the task force, I was really excited because I would be surrounded by people that were passionate about their community, love their community. So many of the organizations that are a part of the task force are grassroots organizations, people that saw a need and were passionate about filling that need. And I think that that's great. And so I just wanted to be a part of it and support people who use my skills to kind of help grow those organizations. And so I think Memphis is a great city. I've loved my time here so far. I've loved getting to know everyone here. But I think we definitely have an issue when it comes to domestic violence, and that just comes across whenever you do any type of statewide look at our numbers. We're twice what the numbers are in other cities. And so there's definitely an issue there, definitely some disconnect between the passion that the service providers have, the passion that comes out of the criminal justice system, and getting survivors the resources and support that they need to get out of those relationships.
Okay, I know you, by saying these things, you actually talked about some gaps that need to be filled.
Yeah.
But the one of the issues is that, I mean, I have been associated with Leadership Memphis, and we talked about what Memphis in particular is. And just even outside Leadership Memphis and every other things that I've been associated with, I came to realize that Memphis is at the top of all the bad lists.
Yes. Yeah.
Be crime, poverty, domestic violence, and crime associated things.
Yeah.
And for me as a Memphian who has lived here for 3 decades, I take it as a challenge to overcome it and see what good can I do as an individual. But one individual cannot do it all.
It's true.
He or she can definitely take a lead, but you do need help. And I have been associated with domestic violence for about 2 decades now. And being associated with the Sexual and Domestic Violence Task Force got me even more closer to the numbers and people who come out with the numbers, like Bill Gibbons.
Yes.
He comes out with the numbers, and then I approached him as a press person with the show, 1 year show, and then he said, hey, yeah, I mean, if this is what you want, yeah, please join the Domestic Task Force.
Yeah.
So when I joined this, I came to the realization of the gaps, the reasons behind the gaps, and also the associations, organizations, and entities that are putting their time, efforts, and money towards addressing those things. So please address all of these issues. What is your observation about all of these?
I think, like I said, there is tremendous passion for addressing the issue of domestic violence in our community. And all of the organizations that I have come in contact and gotten to know, all the different leaders and things, they understand the problems. I think right now the issue is resources. Memphis is a city that is very under-resourced when it comes to pretty much everything, right? All of your basic needs. And so that is a big hurdle that we're going to really have to overcome if we're going to see any dent in any type of crime reduction. There is abject poverty everywhere. All you got to do is drive down the street and see. There's people who are underemployed. There's people who are underhoused. There's people who are homeless. And just the lack of resources just breeds crime because people are stressed. People are they're traumatized just by different things that they've experienced within their lives. And so until we kind of get more resources into the community, I don't know if we're going to really be able to make a dent quite like we want to see. And that's kind of where I think the Public Safety Institute is really trying to fill in that gap. I think they're recognizing, if we could get some support when it comes to finding some federal dollars, get some support from our local government, our state government, to get more resources into our community, I think then we can start start seeing an impact in the crime numbers.
But if you look at grants.gov, there are literally literally
Yes.
hundreds and thousands of grants out there
Yes.
that cater to these issues.
Mm-hmm.
So how come that money doesn't come?
What we've seen is just there's a lot of issues going into writing a grant. So number one, you have to kind of know what you're doing when it comes to grant writing. Number two, you have to navigate the very complicated systems that are set up for even just submitting the grant.
And
so,
I would like to add
Yeah.
that the language in which a grant is written is not pure English.
No, it is not. It's not. Even I
Right.
struggle, right? And it's like I'm an academic who's technically been trained to do this.
Right.
And even, I need to seek advice from people that have written applications and things before. And so, yes. And so it's a very complicated process, and it takes tremendous time. And so when you have these smaller organizations that are already strapped when it comes to providing services, they just don't have the time and energy to then write a 20-page paper basically on the issues within their community. And so that's where we're trying to fill a gap, is see, okay, we do have the time to write a 20-page paper, and we have the skill set to do that. And so we're trying to partner with organizations to try to get some additional financial resources in through those federal sources, because it is not easy. And the other hurdle too is they tend to fund people that have been funded before, and so you kind of have to break through that like hard wall of getting that initial funding in order to be able to kind of get the funding rolling in the community.
So
Yeah,
doesn't that sound
impossible.
intercontinental that people
Yes.
who need it do not get it at all, but who have already received keep on receiving money?
Yes, and it's just because of how it works. Like obviously, if there's a person that's received the funding and they did well with the funding, then they're going to be more
They'll
trustworthy.
showcase that they handle the money well.
Yes, they're less risky than a new person like me showing up and saying, "Hey, I can do this." They're more qualified.
But for anybody who has prepared a grant, Dr. Sarah, it is not risky. Wanted to make that clear. And how many grants have you assisted?
So in this grant cycle, I think we did 5, and then I think I did 2 last year. I have to go back and look at the notes. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
What were they associated with?
Domestic violence, and so there's several main sources that come out. NIJ is one, OVW,
Okay.
OCA.
OVW, I know, but please
Yeah.
Specify. NIJ?
Yes, National Institute of Justice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
OVM?
OVM, OVW.
OVW
Yes.
is...
Office of Violence Against Women.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is an OVM also I came across. But anyway, yeah. But what we are associated is
Yeah.
domestic violence. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so which are the other 3 for this year that you have?
Oh, just those sources. Those are the main sources. Yeah.
I see. So within those 2 you had the 5
Multiple,
this year and 2 last year.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, they put out the calls tend to be very specific and focused on very specific needs. And so the ones that we submitted this year were related to housing, transitional housing. We submitted one that was related to special populations, and so we worked with an organization that was related to serving those with that are within the LGBT community who had experienced domestic violence. So they come out kind of with a variety of things, but they're very specific in what they're asking me to write.
And the organizations you helped were?
Love Doesn't Hurt, and then the YWCA, and then I've assisted the CAF, now I'm going to blank, Community Alliance for the Homeless, on their DV bonus funds that come out of HUD.
Okay, and Agape?
Agape, I haven't helped them yet. I haven't assisted them, yeah.
All right. So these 3 major organizations that you have, how much was the ask?
Oh goodness. I feel like one was for 200,000, one was for 500,000. Every grant has like a max that you can write for, and so what we try to do is look at kind of the organization's funds, and some of them even require kind of a match. And so we try to kind of figure out based on what the max is for the grant, and kind of what the finances are for the organization, what's going to be most appropriate. I can't remember other than that. Yeah.
So was the 2, 3, 500, whatever the amount was the entire need for each organization?
Did they need
Let us say raise $500,000. Was there actual need for $600 or $1 million, and they asked only for 500?
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure we could come up with more. Yeah, I'm sure.
The
Because what it
need
ends
was
up
more,
being,
but they only asked for what the grant would
right.
allow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, basically what you do is you come up with a program that you want to fund, and kind of what so we can quadruple the number of people served, I'm sure, easily, if there were to be a grant that would come out and offer such a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and what did they receive the grant?
No, I don't. I think we will hear about this cycle in October. And
Oh, so I mean, basically, you're saying the response has not yet come out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so
Yeah.
let's
Yes.
hope for the
Fingers
best.
crossed. Yes,
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
Hope House. I helped Hope House with one, and I think we'll find out about that one in September.
And that is also for housing.
Yes, they had gotten a grant a couple years ago, I think, from HUD, and so this was a continuation for housing. Yeah.
So it makes complete sense that getting a grant is a lot more beneficial
Yeah.
for an organization that is doing good for the community, going out, doing hard work, putting
Yes.
time, efforts. But how would it be if somebody were to just put in her own money towards that? How hard?
It would be very simple, I think. All organizations that I've worked with here have private donors that just donate out of the kindness of their heart in varying amounts, and so I think it'd be very easy. Yeah.
So instead of going for a grant, then would you suggest for them to raise their own funds?
So I think if you're a smart leader of a nonprofit, you want to have multiple funding sources coming in because everything fluctuates, right? And so you don't want to be overly dependent upon one particular source of funding. So a lot of people kind of take like a 3-point